MMOs, massively multiplayer online games. A new height for online gaming where hundreds if not thousands of players can congregate in a single world to enjoy the same game. MMOs started as far back as 1991 with Neverwinter Nights, which I never heard of before making this video. It was developed by Beyond Software for PC and its servers ran up until 1997, which is when AOL, or American Online, decided to shut down its servers. Over the past 33 years since Neverwinter Nights, there's been many other MMOs to release, so today I'm looking to play every MMO I can get my hands on and definitively decide which is the best and worst out there. Before we get further into today's video, don't forget to drop a like and hit subscribe so I can keep on making videos. I've been noticing there's a large portion of you guys who watch my videos that aren't subscribed, so if you guys like what I'm doing and want to see more, hitting the subscribe button means a great deal, and it means I can keep making these kinds of videos. When it comes to deciding which is the best and worst MMO out there, I'm going to take a few things into consideration. For starters, cost will factor in, since a lot of MMOs either require subscriptions to play or have a retail price. Another factor with the actual game itself, ranging from graphics, gameplay, and storytelling. Final factor I'll be taking into consideration is how approachable the games are. MMOs can be pretty complex and daunting games for people new to the genre to get into, so points will be taken off for over complexity, seeing as how it creates a smaller market for people to actually enjoy. I myself am not new to the concept of complex games nor to MMOs, so my personal experience won't be included into the approachability a game has, but rather seeing it from the view of my younger self before I played an MMO. Disclaimer, I can't fit every MMO currently running into this video, so if you don't see your favorite game in the video, it's not because I thought of it as seeming boring. The games I chose to talk about in this video were simply the most popular ones that everyone talks about, or ones I thought would be fun to have in the video. I also won't be including real-time strategy, or more simply, just really big versions of Clash of Clans or any social hub games. Simply because a lot of the games I'm going to be talking about in this video are of the action/turn-based variety, which makes real-time strategy seem pretty fucking boring by comparison. To start off this video, we have Neverwinter. Neverwinter was developed by Cryptic Studios and released in 2013. The game is set in the universe of D&D and is completely free to play. I decided to make my character a tiefling warlock, with the idea being in mind that I wanted to have a self-sustaining character with offensive weight to them, as is usually the case when it comes to fantasy RPGs, with tieflings seeming like the best race based on its passives. The game offers a good selection for classes and races, featuring 9 classes and 12 races. The character created in this game I think is good with offering many color and appearance options for your character. Also features sliders for a lot of things to truly make a unique looking character. You also get to choose the god your character worships and their backstory for aesthetic purposes. Now, my impression of this game is feeling overwhelmed. There's a million tabs across the various menus and so many slots for equipable things. It's honestly overkill how many things you can equip to your character. While MMOs are all about the numbers when it comes to gear and abilities, this is just unnecessary for stat boosting. The layout for the menu is also something you need to build a feel for, since it's a headache navigating all the tabs when you want to equip something to your character. Moving past the menu system, there's just a stupid amount of stat categories within the game, half of which come off as rocket science until I use the wiki page to figure out what everything actually means. Gameplay wise though, the game's okay. It's not the smoothest or most exciting for me. The Warlock class in the game I'd say is a more complex class in comparison to others, with having quite a few things to keep an eye on between your damage meter, soul sparks, and ability cooldowns while in combat. The skill tree in the game is the only simple thing about the game, with being pretty straightforward and easy to navigate and understand. There's also the Paragon Path system, which allows you to specialize your class once you reach level 11, which the game explains clearly which path entails what for not only abilities but also for group play mechanics. Graphically, the game is decent. There's a mix between enemies and scenery with pretty good detail, and others that look pretty smoothed over. In terms of storytelling, this game is boring. I'm not saying the devs didn't put time into creating a storyline with immersion for players, but you are bombarded with so many necessary quests constantly that you forget what the point of it all really is. In my time of playing the game, I really couldn't get a ping on what the main objective was supposed to be, with all the mind-numbing NPC dialogue for quests unrelated to the real main objective of stopping Bone Lady. The game also features a pathfinder that automatically is toggled for whatever quest you have prioritized, so you never get lost, which I think is a really good mechanic that's easy to follow. Final thing worth mentioning is the insane amount of in-game stores. There's at least a dozen in-game stores for you to access to buy items with bought in-game currency. This game's highlight in all I'd say is its role-playing capabilities. There's a fair amount of character detail that goes into your character, from appearance, race, class, and background, that You can have some fun role-playing with others to immerse yourself into the game. Next game we're going to talk about is Elder Scrolls Online. Developed by ZeniMax Online and released in 2014, it serves as not only the prequel to the entire Elder Scrolls franchise, but also as Bethesda's first MMO. A new venture for Bethesda to take on to add to their solely single-player catalog of games. The game has a current retail price of $24.99 Canadian on PC and console. Free if you have PS Plus Extra or Game Pass on console. I went ahead and made myself an Orc Templar, a very self-sustaining tank class, and a pretty strong race for passives. The game's race choices are decent with 10 choices to choose from. The downfall of the race selection, I'd say, is that almost half of the choices are just human. It's not surprising seeing as how this was the case in Skyrim as well. What sucks to see though is that in the last 11 years since this game launched, they haven't added any new races besides Imperial, another human race. The game definitely features enemies whose races could have been introduced for players such as Sea Elves, for example. The game features 4 classes as well, with 3 now being available as separate purchases. The classes in this game I think are acceptably diverse. An added feature when it comes to making a character is the faction system. Like Pokemon Go, there are 3 factions which every race is divided up into. Whatever race you choose for your character will automatically place you in the designated faction, being red, blue, and yellow. More specifically, Ebonheart Pact, Daggerfall Covenant, and Aldmeri Dominion. Faction doesn't have any relevance in the game besides for PvP purposes or player versus player, and the area of the world the game plops you in. You can always pay money to make your character the faction of your choosing to still be able to play with your friends in the PvP area no matter your race choice. Now, right off the bat, this game plays incredibly smooth. The gameplay is incredibly fun and easy to understand from the hotbar to the controls. There wasn't any learning curve when jumping into this game, seeing as how the controls are strikingly similar to Skyrim, which everyone and their grandma has played. The game graphically I'd say is decent, with most NPCs being smooth skins and environments looking pretty good for detail's sake. Now for storytelling, most of the quest lines in the regions are pretty interesting and feel unique to one another. The main plotline of the game isn't immediately made clear till after you reach about level 10 or so when you meet the Prophet. The main plotline of the game is pretty fun, with essentially being about banding together a group of legendary heroes to kill Satan. The game features an activity finder in case you find yourself without any quests, and a help I'm stuck button to port you to the nearest fast travel point. Very handy tools. The skill tree system, while featuring numerous skill trees, is easy to understand, and the game features a build advisor to recommend you what things in the skill tree to purchase depending on what kind of character you want gameplay wise, featuring multiple builds to choose from depending on your chosen class. The inventory system is also simple and easy to navigate. This game is very approachable for new MMO players with all the handy tools it has so you don't get lost. Next, we have Destiny 2. Developed by Bungie and released in 2017, it is completely free to play. The game features 3 races to choose from, all of which are for pure aesthetic purposes, and 3 classes. I think the limited choices for race and class doesn't do the game a disservice, especially since each of the 3 classes also have 3 subclasses to each of them. After making myself an Exo Warlock, the game immediately immersed me in its story. The game gives a complete rundown of the Destiny universe in a way that's visually appealing and compelling. The game has a pretty awesome story to it, mixing elements of mystery and sci-fi. Graphically, the game looks great, and it plays amazing. I had so much fun playing it in my first few hours. The game features 4 enemy factions in its vanilla state, which I have to give kudos to the game for actually making the enemies feel unique to each other. I don't know what it is about this game, but unlike other MMOs where all the enemies feel kind of the same as you plow through them, this game somehow makes encountering each of the factions feel unique to one another, outside of just clear visual differences. The enemy factions even combat each other if they come face to face. I literally watched firsthand Cabal and Fallen enemies start fighting each other while I was in the middle of a shootout between the 2 factions. It's a detail I immensely appreciate seeing. In terms of approachability, this game is very easy to get into. The menu layout for inventory and the different tabs are very easy to understand. But this game has one major downfall, and that is its storytelling. Once you finish the tutorial questline, you're literally left without much direction. This may be due to being late to the party, as the game is currently on its 23rd season, so maybe I've just missed that main questline, but I wish the game had a more clear-cut objective to it rather than various miscellaneous missions. Next up is Fallout 76. Developed by Bethesda and released in 2018, it retails for $54.99 on PC, $39.99 on PlayStation, and $53.99 on Xbox Canadian. It's free on console if you have PS Plus Extra or Game Pass. I have no idea why this game has such a price difference between all the platforms. After making my little vault dweller, I set out into the world of absolute boredom. This game is the most boring shit, honestly. It's no surprise why this game didn't do well. Gameplay and graphics wise, it's a good game. There isn't anything fundamentally wrong with how it plays or looks. It's just that this game feels empty. While there are NPCs and quest lines in the game, exploring the open world feels empty. I get that's part of the point since it's post-nuclear apocalypse, but it makes for a boring experience seeing a whole lot of nothing. The Fallout games are fun games. I mean, I personally enjoy both Fallout 3 and 4, but it just doesn't work as an MMO to me. Inventory and menu wise, the game is what you would expect from any Fallout game, which is pretty easy to understand. Storytelling abilities are okay in this game since it follows the same pathway every Fallout game does of leaving a vault in search of someone who's left it. Next, we have the infamously famous and addictive World of Warcraft. Developed by Blizzard and released in 2004 for PC, this game has a paywall subscription after reaching level 20 for $18.99 a month or $227.88 a year Canadian. The game features a hefty amount of race and class options, of which the races are split between two factions. Every race is part of either the Alliance or the Horde, which uniquely this game's classes are limited depending on your race choice. Unlike other fantasy MMORPGs, every race can only have certain classes. Between the racial passives and class specifications, your choice of race has some weight to it. The game features a whopping 26 races and 13 classes, of which 12 of those choices are locked until you reach level 10 or 40 respectively, or purchase the War Within expansion. The game gives you a good variety of customization options for each race as well. So after making myself a Blood Elf Demon Hunter, I set off into the famous Azeroth. Now immediately I'm placed into the storyline of the Burning Legion, seeing as how my character is a Demon Hunter. Demon Hunters, when specialized into being tanks, are the perfect definition of a self-sustaining tank, which I'm all about. It feels like as if the Paladin class and Warlock class had a baby. Gameplay wise, this game is really fun. Story wise, the game does an amazing job of immersing you. Graphically, the game looks good. It's not the most detailed, but it's enough to get the job done. Final thing to touch on is the skill tree system, which is pretty straightforward and easy to grasp in this game. Before we move on to the next game, I wanted to slap another disclaimer that I'm also well aware that the first few hours of World of Warcraft doesn't do it justice with how much shit there is really in the game and the decades worth of lore it's built. So don't worry, wowheads. My first few hour experience isn't without consideration to the vast amount of content the game has for itself. Next game on the list is Guild Wars 2. Now this game I haven't heard of prior to making this video, but it's one that's named kept popping up. Released in 2012 and developed by ArenaNet, Guild Wars 2 is completely free to play on PC. The game features 5 races and 8 classes, or professions as they call them, to choose from. Now to save the anticipation of my thoughts with the game, I'm going to start off by saying the only 2 good things I have about this game, which are its graphics and character creator. I think graphically this game is good compared to some other MMOs. After making myself a Norn Necromancer, the game has a pretty decent opening cutscene that's tailored to your character's race and personality qualities you choose while making your character. The game also features some pretty unique race and class selections, as well as offering a good selection of options when creating your character, but my compliments stop there. For some reason, every character in this game talks like they're standing in a cave. Literally the most innocent and simple conversations have this weird echo to them. The hotbar is simple enough to understand, but I found it was constantly changing my abilities I had slotted, which I'm pretty sure the reason being every time you change the type of weapon you're using, it switches the abilities you can use. My character is supposed to have racial abilities as well I can use, but I saw no indication of being able to use them. The controls are simple enough to understand, but the game does a terrible job of giving tutorials. In my first hour, I got little to no explanation on things except how to walk. This game gives me deja vu with its plethora of tabs for everything like in Neverwinter. The overall approachability of this game isn't great. The storytelling doesn't do a much better job since I don't quite understand the point of your character existing besides just exploring and killing anything that wants to kill you. Next game we're going to take a look at is The Lord of the Rings Online. I didn't know there was an MMO for Lord of the Rings till I made this video for good reason as I've come to find out. Developed by Standing Stone Games and released in 2007, the game's completely free to play on PC. Now the first thing I noticed when just opening the game is its graphics. This game looks horrible. It clearly hasn't had any graphic changes since it was released in 2007. After finding it in myself to push past the horrific opening sequence, I was met with the game's character creator. The game offers 8 races to choose from and 12 classes, of which 4 are locked behind a paywall. Similar to World of Warcraft, each race can only be certain classes. The game offers a poor selection of options when customizing your character, with some of the face options being indistinguishable from each other. For some reason, some of the races also have either very in-depth customization options, while others have extremely basic options, which they're all pretty much just humans, so I don't know why some get special treatment over others in this sense. The options for colors are also poor, since to pick hair color and eye color, for example, you need to click and drag to the color you want instead of there being some kind of list or grid. The game gives you almost no tutorial whatsoever, but instead you get a multitude of informational pop-ups that also don't care to mention hotkeys for said things like the map or just basic controls. While the game's tabs and inventory are simple to understand, they're also clunky. The game's hotbar and skill trees are simple to understand, but I find when playing a Bjorning that whenever you switch between bear form and human form, that your hotbar resets every single time, meaning you have to reslot your abilities again. The game's approachability while having simple controls is awful with explaining them, making you feel completely lost if you don't already have some experience playing MMOs. The game's storytelling is also trash in this game because I have no idea what the main goal is. In my first few hours of playing, there legit seemed like no point to my character existing. Next game up to bat is Wizard 101, which I remember playing some of in my childhood, so it's been some years since I've seen this game, which they've actually recently announced as of 6 months ago a console port for this game. Developed by King's Isle Entertainment and released in 2008, it's completely free to play on PC, and apparently soon for consoles as well. Unlike the rest of the MMO so far, this one is a turn-based card game, which doesn't do it any disservice because this game's pretty fun for being a kid's game. The character creator gives decent options for customization, and the game has a feature where you can take a short quiz to determine the school of magic you belong to, or you can simply skip it to be the wizard school you want to be in. The wizard schools are fire, storm, ice, life, death, myth, and balance. I'm not sure if the wizard school you belong to has any actual gameplay differences, but unlike most other MMOs, you can't actually name your character whatever you want. Instead, you're given 3 lists of words to make up your name. So after making myself a myth witch, for obvious reasons, I'm off to not so Hogwarts. Starting off graphically, this game is pretty alright. The animation style reminds me a lot of Skylanders, which I loved playing growing up. The game's easy to understand with tutorials helpfully explaining most aspects of the game. It's a very approachable game which can be expected from a game designed for children. The game's storytelling is simplistic, with being a mix of a fixed Felix and trying to stop the obvious villainous character, who also happens to be the ex-professor of the Death School, which no one could have seen coming, I know. My only 2 complaints that I have with this game is combat being open, meaning that when you initiate combat with some kind of enemy, any player can join in the fight, and that mounts that increase your speed are also all temporary for your character. I've seen a lot of people complain too, saying that there's a huge part of this game essentially locked behind a paywall, but the game's size seems fair for the part that's free, with tons of NPCs to give quests and a city to explore. A final complaint I have with this game, which doesn't have to do with the game itself but more so about the accessibility of this game, it was overly complicated creating an account to play this game simply because most links on the website essentially just take you to a login prompt instead of an account creation which is needed to play the game. You have to specifically Google Wizard 101 sign up on Google to get to account creation. Next game up is Star Trek Online. Developed by Cryptic Studios and released in 2010, it's completely free to play on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation. Now, I'm in no way a fan of Star Trek, and I'm always going to have a negative opinion about it, but I'll keep my bias on Star Trek to as minimal as possible as I try to fairly judge the game itself for what it is. Starting off, the most eye-catching thing about this game is its character creator. You get a plethora of race options within different factions, which the coolest thing this game does that's truly unique is creating your own race. They essentially just give you all the assets you use for modeling to different races and let you make anything you want. If we were going based on just character creators for this video, then this game would definitely win, but we're looking to see which is the best all around. So after making myself an engineer of the Klingon Defense Force, never thought I'd hear myself say something like that, I have my first Star Trek experience. Now, there's a lot of lore to this game that's probably going to go over my head, but what I can say is that the intro sequence was pretty cool to this game. I might not get all the ins and outs of anything going on, but the game definitely makes you feel like the main character. While the game doesn't do a great job of having a main quest line going on in it, but rather just making you feel like an errand bitch, the gameplay makes up for this, I think, in a few ways. For starters, combat is basic enough to understand and grasp, and it's pretty fun. Half of the game's gameplay as well is flying your spaceship through space having battles, which is pretty cool. Graphically, this game is pretty good too, with having some details on some of the character models. Now, my major critique with this game is the tab system. There's so many tabs in this game that it can feel overwhelming, not to mention all the tabs associated with your ship's crew and ship itself. While the gameplay is approachable, the inventory and tabs aren't so much, which kind of makes the gameplay harder to enjoy when you find yourself trying to figure out the mess of the tab system. In terms of storytelling, despite not understanding a whole lot, it does a pretty alright job, I think. Now, the final game we're going to take a look at is DC Universe Online. Developed by Dimensional Ink Games and released in 2011, it's completely free to play on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation. In this MMO, you get to create your very own hero or villain in the fight against Brainiac. The game offers 15 powers and 11 weapons to choose for your character to wield, with 9 powers being separate purchases. Each power comes with its own role, being a mix of either damage, tank, or healer, and each weapon having its own combat mechanics. Along with selecting your character's powers and weapon, you also get to select your mentor and your mobility being either flight, super speed, acrobatics, or discs? I'm not really sure why this is much different compared to flight, but the game offers quite a selection for customization options for your hero or villain. My only critique with the customizer is that you can't individually dye different parts of your character, so you pretty much have to pick 3 color palette options with no fine tuning to them. Between the options of being a hero or villain and the 6 mentors the game offers you, your experience in the game is tailored specifically towards your alignment and mentor, creating a unique main questline experience. Nice touch, Warner Bros. After making myself a nature villain, I set off to save the world from Brainiac. Now, immediately, this game gives you a pretty big letdown in the graphics department. The game first opens with this super edgy and nice looking cutscene, but then throws you into this. The game graphically is fine by all means when the game's not struggling to maintain my super speed, but it's just kind of funny to me that they give you that cutscene for then this. Gameplay wise, this game plays good with feeling smooth and gives you a variety of ways to approach combat between your weapon choice and powers. The game's storytelling isn't the most immersive, but it's pretty cool taking on iconic DC heroes and villains with objectives that make sense. The inventory and skill trees are easy to understand and access, with the skill trees being a little overwhelming between being able to not only acquire iconic powers, but also having a skill tree for your weapon and mobility choices. Overall approachability for this game, while seeming a bit clunky, is good for players new to MMOs. Combat in this game, while enjoyable during my recording, started to get boring after a bit. There's nothing technically wrong with the combat of this game, but there's just something about it that starts to get boring the more you play it. The game also offers multiple locations iconic to the DC universe, such as Metropolis and Gotham City, for you to explore. But with all our MMOs now having been given a look at, it's time for the anticipated best and worst rankings to be given out. Starting off with the worst MMO, it was pretty easy to pick which one was just bottom of the barrel awful. The worst MMO is none other than the Lord of the Rings Online. This game just looks and plays bad. Not to mention, immediately when I loaded into the game, I saw a full-blown toxic moment happening in the chat between players. The game just feels old when you play it. It lacks approachability with having little to no tutorials. It graphically belongs in a museum with how outdated the graphics are. Combat is incredibly both underwhelming and poorly designed compared to other MMOs, and the storytelling in this game is almost non-existent, it feels. One of the things I always appreciate and pride in a game are the character creators. There's nothing more fun and creative than making an original or pre-existing character in a game. Just simply playing around in a character creator can keep you entertained for hours if it's good enough. This game doesn't even have that at the least going for it. There's absolutely nothing fun about this MMO. Now, after giving out that trash ranking, it's time to glaze and crown the best MMO. It was a pretty close call for me when deciding which is the best, with there being some really great MMOs out there, but after taking all factors into consideration, I can confidently say that the best MMO is The Elder Scrolls Online. Now, before everyone starts blowing up the comment section about this, allow me to explain. The reason this game came out on top is for a couple of reasons. For starters, this game is affordable in the sense that it's a one-time purchase with no paywalls or subscriptions needed. So unlike games like World of Warcraft with a hefty $200 a year Canadian price tag attached to it, this game is nice on the wallet with in no way needing to spend any real money on it after you buy it. Another reason it won is due to its storytelling ability. The main quest line and every side quest you encounter in this game feels important and not just some tedious, minuscule objective. It has a feeling of weight with what you're doing and even allows you to make some pretty big decisions when it comes to some of these quests. Another reason this game won was for its approachability. Between the gameplay, inventory systems, and skill trees, this game is something I can see almost anyone being able to enjoy, whether you're a seasoned pro or new to MMOs. It was a really close call when it came to deciding the best MMO, but based on these reasons when compared to other MMOs, it was pretty clear that Elder Scrolls Online takes the cake. But with all that being said, it brings us to the end of today's video. Let me know down in the comments what MMOs you thought should have been in the video, and maybe I'll make a part 2 where I take a look at some more. Don't forget to drop a like as well if you enjoyed today's video. Till we meet again, stay freaky.